All right. I don't even know how to begin this, to be honest with you. Maybe I'll just start talking. So you all know, or actually, let me do that. Or you should know, based if you're a current member, I've been talking about this for a while. So the Top Gun Fighter Foundation was started. Ted, if we upgrade, will you credit the 5K from the hunters to the lifetime? No, Ted, you pay the 5 for access for 6 months, and then it starts. If we'll prorate it, Ted. Like if you're in the hunters for 2.5 months, and you're like, you know what, I do an upgrade. How about I prorate it? I'm not going to credit the full because then everything was free up until that point. That's not how that works. I will prorate it, Ted. How about that? I'll meet you halfway. So, guys, the Top Gun Fighter Foundation. Eric Swenson, call sign Swede, one of my best friends, man. I got winged with him down in Kingsville. He was one of the groomsmen in my wedding. Marine fighter pilot, FedEx guy, beautiful wife, 4 daughters, put a bullet in his head. We used to ski together. I mean, just a great dude. Jaws, Lauren Kittle. He left the squadron in Miramar one day, went home, got a gun, put a bullet in his head. Glenn Crabb, Buster Crabb, put a bullet in his head. Just, if you guys don't know the statistics, in the hour that I'm talking to you, a veteran, one of my sisters or brother kills themselves. I think that's higher. That statistic is based on, you ready for this? Is how good our government operates. 3 years ago, as a result of this pandemic, I guarantee you it's 1 per hour. They said it's 20, maybe 22 a day. I guarantee you the suicide rates for everybody have gone through the roof because of this bullshit. It's got to stop. It breaks my heart. So I started this foundation to try and fight to prevent veteran suicide, man. The VA sucks. I am a disabled veteran. Not to the VA. I know hundreds of disabled veterans that aren't disabled to the VA. Exactly. I'm still fighting my shit, man. I have the resources to do it. Imagine being a staff sergeant coming back from kicking open doors in Fallujah, seeing the horror that you've seen in the VA, saying, well, your PTSD and you being fucked up isn't service related. Fill out these forms and appeal. It's a disgrace. Our VA definitely has some good Americans in there. The ones that I've interacted with suck. Donald Trump, you hate Donald Trump. Now I hate you. Oh, really? Donald Trump, one of the best things he did was reform the VA. When he came in after Barack Hussein Obama and John McCain with their horrific Arizona VA, 12 dudes died waiting as they fudged numbers. And don't even get me started. Namaste. Let me get grounded. Donald Trump actually had to pass a law so you could fire people at the VA. You get a government job, it's almost impossible to get fired. So a guy like me, as I talk to you, ladies and gentlemen, there is a jet engine in my head for the rest of my life. I woke up one day years ago to a squeal in my head, and it will never go away. It's maddening. I think Swede killed himself because of tinnitus. We talked about it one. He's like, dude, I can't. So even when I try and meditate, I can never sit in silence, guys. It's awful. So I wanted to try and support this, preventing veteran suicide. I suffer most likely from some PTSD. Well, I mean, you guys know I lost a sister to a drunk driver when she was 19. I lost 18 folks on active duty. You know how many combat losses? I lost 8 on the USS Abraham Lincoln before we even went to Iraq. 3 in a Prowler, 2 in a Tomcat, Hornet. I mean, I ate dinner with K9 before he took a night catapult shot off the Lincoln, never to be seen again. And then I started to hear, especially with where I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you where I went, but the doctor that I was working with is like, I'm like, well, I might kind of probably maybe a little PTSD. He's like, dude, based on our studies and clinical studies and all the research I've done, fighter pilots are fucked. You think pulling 7, 8, 9 Gs for 15 years had no impact on your brain? He's like, you absolutely have some sort of brain trauma. I'm like, what? They didn't tell me that at day one of fighter pilot school. He's like, oh yeah, the more that we do research on you guys, the more that we're finding that you clearly pulling 9 Gs, passing out, or fighting the jet on the edge of consciousness is not healthy. So as I started the foundation last year, and God steered me to some freaking insane trading last year, I did what? I had the money. I'm going to start helping. Found Warrior Health Foundation down here in South Florida. Sean Rosario. These guys help operator syndrome, right? Operator syndrome is PTSD, anxiety, depression. It's all wrapped up in the just awfulness. And I supported their treatment of folks like that, and it's been absolutely just great. And then by the grace of God, we bumped into Amber and Marcus Capone. Let me give you this video. So this is Amber and Marcus doing an interview with Team Never Quit. Anybody know who started Team Never Quit? Say it with me. Marcus Luttrell, one of the most famous SEALs on the face of the planet. Why? He is the lone survivor. The book is an incredible read. Cried like a baby reading that book. And then many of you have maybe seen the movie Lone Survivor with what's his name, Marky Mark or whatever, Mark Wahlberg. Watch this interview with Marcus and Amber Capone, and I'll tell you about their story. Let me give you this Time Magazine article about Marcus and Amber Capone. The Time Magazine article begins with this sentence. Amber Capone had become afraid of her husband. And it goes on from there. So that's Amber and Marcus Capone. Let me give you a quick. So I did an interview with a national media arm yesterday. One of the guys I went overseas with for this treatment also is in the article. They're interviewing Marcus today. Oh, this is all coming national, guys. I literally he blazed the trail. She blazed the trail. I'm blazing the trail for aviators because we'll talk about the aviation side, but well, let me give that to you briefly. These are operators. So Marcus Luttrell, Navy SEAL, he was a breacher, man. First dude up at the door, C4, blow the door in. Just horrific trauma to this man and his head and his brain, along with the horrific trauma of seeing his best friends blown to pink dust. He got back. Awful. You ready for this? At one time, he was on 8 medications. The VA, here's the VA for you. Oh, you're on this, for that? Well, let me give you these, for that, for this. His brain scan fucked all these brain centers and surgical centers he went to, dark clouds of his brain. It was awful. The drinking, Amber, I love these people with my life. And Marcus is now one of my best brothers. He was with me overseas. She's like, Whiz, we went to the funeral of one of our buddies, a SEAL, put a bullet in his head. And she was sitting there next to him at the funeral looking at Marcus, and she goes, he's next. I had to do something about it. So nothing like a Navy SEAL wife scorned, man. She's like, I have to save my husband's life. So she looked into, here's the VA. Well, another this, or take 8 more drugs, or this, or just nothing, man. Zero. She had to find this stuff on her own, and she did. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is one of the most incredible things that has ever happened to me in my life. It has helped save my life. And I've never felt better in my life. A peace where there was chaos before, there was only clarity. I have absolute answers to just everything in my life. I saw it, I felt it, And the things that I didn't, quote, get answers to, or a hanging Chad, I gave it up to God. And when I did that in my journey, it felt absolutely, it was like, that was the right answer, Matthew. I got it. So write this down. Iboga, right? So Iboga it's a root. It's a root in Africa or whatever country. I want you to write down Iboga, comma, tree of knowledge. They absolutely believe. I've done so much research on this since. Here's how this. Let me back up a little bit. Here's how this came about. So Marcus moved his mom down to God's waiting room here, Boca Raton. I love his mom, and Amber and Marcus were in town. We donated a lot of money to them because as soon as they told me about their story, Amber said I took him overseas for this plant medicine treatment as a last resort. And she said after 2.5 days, Whiz, of me like lying on a couch, he came out and I knew I had my husband back. Day and night. I tear up a little bit because she cries when she's like, Whiz, as soon as he walked out of that, when he went in that door, he died. When he came out, I knew I had my husband back. I was like, holy shit, man. I trusted them with my life before I went and did the journey. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm throwing even more money at you guys. So we met at New York Prime in Boca, which is kind of where Christine gave me the stock tip. I like New York Prime in Boca. And I awarded them a $100,000 grant because in Dallas, so at the Warrior Health Foundation event in Dallas is where I met them finally. And we went out to dinner that night, and this is where they gave me their story and everything like that. And she's like, because she didn't go shooting that day. Marcus was on my team. Check this out. My boy Jack, my son Jack, it was me, Jack, and a Marine, and Marcus was on our team to shoot. Marcus on one of the whatever they call it, not a hole, but on the course where the pigeons crossed, the clay pigeons crossed at one point. Marcus hit one shot, both of them. I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. My son Jack went up after Marcus, one shot, both pigeons. Marcus is like, are you kidding me? It was like two people getting a hole in one. But my son Jack, I call him Deadeye. Anyway, we went out. I'm like, Marcus, where's Amber? He's like, kind of back at the hotel working. I'm like, she works a lot. At dinner that night, she's like, Whiz, I kind of had a breakdown today. I'm like, well, what's wrong? She's like, I got like 9 more applications today. Right. So as a vet, you apply for this treatment. And just imagine the applications this woman gets. All of these dudes are at the end of their rope. The VA's failed them. Medicine's failed them. Everything's failed them. Please help me. And I'm like, oh my God, Amber, what do I need to do? What is it? A personnel thing? A money? She's like, it's just a money thing. It's $3,500 for the center for the treatment, and about $1,000 for travel and stuff. I'm like, in my mind, well, I didn't tell him right there. I'm like, done. We got some cushion in the foundation. It's going right to these people. So fast forward to Boca, when we went out to dinner, I'm like all giddy to give them money, because if it's my God, man, it'll be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So I'm like, I can't wait to give these guys this $100,000 grant. So I do that, and of course they start crying. We all start crying because I just their story of it saving. And Marcus and I have become very good friends in the past couple months. He just kept kind of telling me, well, and then this guy, and then this guy. I'm like, you're literally, not hyperbole, like saving lives. He's like, oh no, there hasn't been one bad thing. Knock on wood. Nobody's gotten hurt. Everybody has been, quote, cured. We're talking from alcoholics to heroin addicts to dudes whose minds were completely fucked. 100%. And I'm like, again, I believe that I'm like, okay, I'll still support you. So at dinner, he said, what are you doing next Friday? I'm like, I don't know, nothing. He's like, you got to come overseas with us. I had the most incredible group going down, and I want you to go. And he had known about my background, my losses in my life and everything like that. And I'm like, okay. So this isn't what I thought it would be. He said there's going to be 5 of you. Famous NFL player, a naval aviator, me, Navy fighter pilot, 2 Navy SEALs, and a JTAC. And of course, I'm like, all right, so we're all going to meet and kind of go to this place and yay, kumbaya type of thing. Oh no, folks, this is an absolute airtight process. I had to talk to the medical director to get approved. He passed me off to a nurse that did an hour phone call, full medical history, everything after an hour. Then I had to go get my blood taken and do a whole blood work panel. Then, they sent a couple manuals that you have to start reading and get up to speed on. Vets, so their foundation, folks, write this down, is called VETS, Veterans Exploring, or I'll just bring it up. Vets Exploring Treatment Solutions. Veterans Exploring, yeah. So this process, folks, it's airtight, man. It is pretty, let me move this over to here, all the way up here. I'll put the link in the chat box here. So this is Marcus and Amber's foundation, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. There you go. The mission's right there. VETS provides resources, research, and advocacy for U.S. military veterans seeking treatment with psychedelic-assisted therapies. And you can click here and watch their video, watch their story. And if you don't shed a tear, you're a machine. Anyway, so doctor, nurse, blood, 2 coaching calls with a psychologist, and she ended up being on site with us as well. So this thing, man, it's a tight process, right? So they said you're going to do Ibogaine Friday, right? And that's a journey, man, which I'm going to get into. Friday journey. And then they call Saturday a gray day. And it's never been more appropriately named a gray day. It was needed. And then Sunday morning I died. And I was reborn. Saturday morning we did 5 MEO. And then Monday we came back to the United States. Okay. So that's kind of the flow, but the intake process is tight. This isn't 5 dudes going overseas to party or something like that. And real quick, these are not recreational, man. They call Ibogaine the grandfather. They call 5-MeO mom, and ayahuasca, psilocybin, MDMA. They call dad. Mom and dad are down here. Ibogaine is a fucking nuclear weapon, mainly reserved for folks with PTSD or CTE. The NFL guy that went down there, we're best friends. All of us I've known these guys forever. After what we did that weekend, the best friends in my life. So the NFL guy, awful trauma. He was a 4-year at a certain college, number 2 overall draft pick. The total number 2, man. And I talked to him, we all talk. These guys, I don't know. Everybody's telling me I look different. I'm talking different. Everybody is different, man. And we'll get into it. So the actual intake process is pretty tight. Now, for operational security reasons, let me go take a look at my slides, because I just kind of threw this together. I'm just going to free ball here. I'll show you this. For operational security reasons, I'm not going to tell you where we went specifically. If you can imagine a drug cartel, Al Qaeda, ISIS getting a lead on where some of the, our nation's treasure is seeking therapy, and they're kind of out of it. Nah. So I won't disclose 3 of the folks I went down there with until they do. So went south, out of the country. Beautiful beautiful place, overlooking the Pacific. Just spectacular. 4 stories, beautiful wood, very welcoming. That was kind of the master bedroom. And if you're sitting there asking, well, first of all, there's 5 beds, 5 of us went down there. One of the funniest things I ever heard was when one of the guys went in, we all kind of went in to drop our bags off when we got there on Friday. He's like, why are the beds on the floor? Well, we kind of found out the hard way later on. Very welcoming place, very, beautiful. This actually was a setup in the room for Sunday. And I went to church that Sunday, and that's what my church looked like. You don't need to go to a church, guys. You got God's right. You got a direct line with God, and I'll share that with you. But what just an absolutely spectacular location. I think that was me on Sunday, man. Just a completely reborn person. So one of the guys that I went down there with, I can tell you, many of you know who it is. It's JT. Jared Taylor is one of the founders of Black Rifle Coffee, man. Him, Evan, and Matt, massive company right now. I ordered a ton of it online. He is now part of the Top Gun Fighter Foundation because he just couldn't be a greater American. He was a JTAC, right? He was a forward air controller, man. He was on the ground right up in the front line with a couple of the guys. There's 2 Navy SEALs in that picture who I can't name, and then an NFL player. But when those guys tell their own stories, we'll talk. And that was the night before we left. Absolutely, dudes who didn't think this was possible to happen. All right, so let's talk through kind of let me just leave one of the pictures up there of like the place or something like that. Yeah, let me do the room. How about that? I'll leave that up there. So this is plant medicine, folks. I don't like calling it psychedelics. It's plant medicine. And I kind of love the fact that God put this on this planet to enable us to be able to become one with him or to speak with him or it. I'm not being pejorative, folks. If you allow me to say him, it's not because God's asexual, man. There ain't no, I've felt God. I've been God. It's energy and it's light and it's love. But if I slip, it's not, please forgive me. He's forgiven me for everything. So allow me. So Friday is they weigh you, right? Because to figure out the right amount of the medicine. And then we do a little bit of a ceremony around sunset, on a fire ceremony, right? We on a piece of paper, we wrote down the things we wanted to get rid of: shame, anger, regret, depression, things we wanted to bring it back into our life, compassion, loving kindness, happiness, the ability to show up and be the best I can for everybody. And you threw that into the fire, and we all went around and did that. We listened to a couple songs. One of the most powerful songs I've ever listened to, I'm going to share with you right now for you to look up and listen to it on your own. Nahko, you need to listen to this when you get a second. Listen to it, but listen to the words, man. The words you have got to listen to. After doing my journey, when I listen to this song, I cry. And I don't cry out of sadness, I cry out of joy. So it's Black as Night, it's called. So please listen to this. So after that ceremony, you take it. It's the Ibogaine's in a pill. It's in a tablet, like a Tylenol, a longer thing. So we took it, and then we went upstairs one at a time. And going into this space, which now I consider a sacred space, they put sage all around us, and I gave Marcus he gave me a big hug, and I was like, okay, hey, I gave him a big hug, and he's like, I love you, man. I'm like, okay, I love you too, man. I did not know what was about to happen, and it made sense because he's like, When I walked in that door, I kind of died. So a little bit of prep work. 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I was at some low points in my life, I was separated from my wife, alcohol, drugs, you name it, just living uh, all those layers, right? The further you get away from God, the more layers that you put on between between you and him, between you and it. And this experience destroys every one of those layers, and you're allowed to get back to source energy. I bring this up because 5 years ago, or whenever it was, I was kind of at a low point. I will be on. You're going to get my God's honest truth with all this stuff. If it wasn't for my daughter, my son, and my son, I don't think I would be here. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to share a super ton personal stuff between Susie and I. And again, just know it's fantastic. But you're going to get about 20%, and it will still be incredibly powerful. But I bring that up because a good friend of mine introduced me to meditation. And again, 10 years ago, if you had said, Whiz, you're going to be meditating someday, I'd kick my own ass, wearing Lululemon, right? And then I found hot yoga. So I found yoga, I found meditation, and I will tell you that doing both of those things absolutely prepared me 1,000% for this. The operators that I went with, that they're like, I don't know how to fucking meditate, man. I think that's dumb. It was a tougher experience. So if you're even contemplating doing anything like this, start getting a meditation practice together and start exploring doing some yoga. I love the hot yoga. Okay, so went into the room. And the rest of the intake day, folks, it's an intake day. They did a drug test. They did an alcohol test. If any of that came up positive, you couldn't participate. So there was no drinking a week before. They told you to cut back on the meat and everything like that. It's a very structured program. They also ran an IV port, not an IV, just the port, in case anything happened. Nothing's ever happened. We still run an IV port. They also did an EKG on all 5 of us when we were there. So in the room to the left of this master room was kind of a medical room. It still looked comfortable and cool shit in there, but it had all the medical shit in there. So this is no fly-by-night, thing. A cardiologist came on site, and also 2 nurses. So there was a doctor there, the guy that runs the center, and then for the journey, and then Friday and then Sunday, he came back, a very high-known cardiologist, and 2 nurses. And then when you went into the room, they also did EKG. So we had all the EKG leads. So on every one of these tables, folks, we had a monitor, and they also put a thing on your finger for heart rate or whatever it was. So it's very, very, very. I put the link in the chat box. Okay, Black as Night. The link to the video is in the chat box. Couple important safety tips that 2 guys didn't do. They gave you, a little, like a blackout mask, and I took my watch off. I took my watch off and put it right on the table, and I put the eye shades down. The 2 guys that didn't, man, were turned into like clock watchers, like at 3 a.m, like, oh my God, when's this going to end type of thing. They were miserable, and they didn't put their eye shades down. So like if a nurse got up and kind of tiptoed by, it was like Satan or something like that type of shit. So important safety tip. I put the damn shade, my eye thing on. So, you lie there, and, it's one of those things like, hey, is this thing working, or when's it going to hit? So I had my mantra from my meditation practice, and, you're just kind of waiting there. And they said this earlier as part of the brief. The brief, there are 2 Navy SEALs who, one lives there full time, one's the OPSO. So it's a very, they got their briefs down. And the lady who was down there, who was my coach, she was there for all of us, said, you're going to hear like a swarm of bees coming. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Guys, I was laying there, and all of a sudden, I heard like a swarm of bees. So, and then I realized it wasn't a swarm of bees. it was me. We're all energy, man. And again, for those of you that know me well, you're probably going to be sitting here like, okay, everything I'm telling you happened, and it's 1,000% true. There's nothing but truth. It was energy. I was vibrating at a frequency, man. So you have to vibrate at the right frequency in order to tune in and go on this journey. It was exactly as advertised, man. I started to vibrate, and then the visualization started to happen. When I tell you that I saw everything, and for the rest of the brief here, these words fail. They will fail to convey everything. I remember, make sure you have a journal or you bring a journal and you're journaling. I did before, during, and after. I'm still doing it, and it's fantastic. The day after the journey, I went downstairs and I just wrote shit, even if it didn't make sense, and now it's all unpacking itself. But laying there, I saw everything. You ready for this? This was 12 hours. Sometimes during it, it felt like it was forever, and I'm going to tell you about forever in a couple minutes. But then, literally, I pulled up my eye shade and looked outside, and the sun was up. I'm like, and it went like that. So, I saw everything in this world. I saw everything in the universe. Everything. A beautiful rose would appear. I'd look at just how incredible it was, and then all of a sudden, like a million roses would appear and go on for infinity, right? Shapes, colors. This is not like some psychedelic trip. It was very kind of like disciplined. It's not like I thought it would. I wasn't, quote, tripping. This was all orderly, and I literally felt, and the view I had was like kind of like a movie, like the camera, right? And I felt literally like I was under God's arm. Like the dude had me and was like, hey man, I have so much to show you, Matthew. And we went on a journey together. Sunday, I became God. I died. Friday night was God taking me around, man. So after all of this visualization, just how beautiful everything is, and energy and light and everything, it kind of settled down. They say for the first half, it's the visualization phase, right? The medicine is going in there and saying, hey, man, this is what the world is, right? This is life. And the universe. And then the second half, you can kind of navigate a little bit, and a little bit of driving. So towards, I don't know if it could have been 2 minutes in, it could have been 2 minutes before I woke up, but it felt like towards the middle-ish, all of a sudden I am literally in space, right? Or what I perceived as space. And it was very, folks, I don't think I moved for like 10 hours. I think maybe towards the end, one of the biggest decisions I ever made in my life was kind of rolling on my side. Because if you like move too much, it'll give you vertigo, and you can purge, it's called. You don't throw up, you actually purge. JT next to me, he sounded like he was going through horse shit from hell. The guys who, no kidding, were suffering. My experience, ladies and gentlemen, was 1,000,000% spiritual. Those guys, a couple of them went through fucking hell. And guess what? They're ready to go right back down there to do it again. I'm good. I got everything that I needed. Those guys, and I'll tell you, at one point, I remember they call it purging. You actually fast the day of, and you try and get you go to the bathroom as much as you can. I mean, that was my only concern. I'm like, holy shit, man, do I have to go to the bathroom? Like, did they give you like a little tube and stuff like that? And there's nurses to help you to the bathroom. But I remember lying there going through my journey, and then JT was he sounded like he was dying. And I remember like trying to, like a good aviator, to a JTAC. I'm like, God, please help him. Please. I tried to send him energy and stuff like that. And I remember God going, Matthew, I got him. He's getting exactly what he needs. Just why don't you worry about you for a little bit? It was so calming. Okay, so let me get back to wait, Wiz, you're talking to God? You ready for this? So in the middle of like just in space, all of this, all of a sudden, there's a massive white light energy just there, loving. I can't describe the feeling, but I kind of knew. I'm like, and I asked, I said, are you God? Didn't answer with a word. He answered, I felt the answer, and I literally exploded into everything. It was the most incredible feeling. After I composed myself, I guess I'm a little doubting Matthew, because I said, can you give me a sign? And you ready for this, folks? I shit you negative. Around that big thing of light in the black, in cursive writing, the word sign kind of appeared a couple times and went away. And again, I just kind of exploded. I'm like, holy shit. And then I kind of remember kind of chuckling a little bit, like, that's pretty cool. God's got a sense of humor. My God's funny. Whew. So it was humbling. It was staggering. It was, but it was 1,000% comfortable. And I remember asking, because they tell you, they do a good brief. They're like, oh, this battery's going to wear out. Hang on one second. I need to move closer to my power cord over here. The brief's pretty good because, they say, hey, make sure you have questions for the medicine, right? And to have intentions. So, after God kind of saying, yeah, this is me, I remember sitting there or laying there, and I said, well, where you been? And he said, I haven't gone anywhere. Where did you go? Right? And again, these aren't words. I'm going to tell you in a minute or so how he communicated with me. But I was like, I was sad for a second, and then I felt absolutely forgiveness, peace. Like, then I said, how do you exist? I don't get this. I got this. I have always been, and I will always be. And I couldn't understand that, right? That just didn't make sense. I got caught in a little bit of a loop. And part of that loop was, well, who made you? And I think one or two more times I got I have always been, and I will always be. And I think I tried that loop one more time, and all of a sudden, boom. Again, words will fail me, but I'm going to tell you that I felt what forever is. I experienced it. He put me right in forever, and I felt it, and he answered it. I remember waking up the next day and writing in my journal, I wrote, I can't wait to tell Susie how much I love her. When she says, I love you forever, I now know what it means. I felt it. So God literally said, I'm like, who made you? Boom. Answered. It was not using words. He was communicating through music. He said, Matthew, I don't use words. I'm in everybody. I am in everything. You speak to somebody, it's me. That was incredibly powerful. And and in my journey, and I'll tell you some of the things that I saw. In my journey, anytime that I saw something that wasn't meant for me or first of all, the camera, for lack of a better word, would just kind of move away from it. There was a couple times I'm like, wait, no, I want to see that person. And it was gentle. It was like, no, that's not meant for you. And the music would go lower. So they had music in the background. That was beautiful. I have the playlist. You ready for this? I meditate twice a day now, and I listen to that playlist, and I am back. It doesn't take me like 5 minutes to get settled in my meditation. As soon as I press play and I hear the music from the ceremony, it's incredible. I can't describe it. So he was answering with the music, but he was also answering with energy. So let me tell you some of the things that I went in there with some, some things that were painful in my life, right? That I won't share all of them, but clearly my sister, my father dying at a young age and some other things. But I saw my dad and my sister, and they were young and they were happy, and it was great. And I'm looking at them and I'm, trying to get closer. And then all of a sudden they disappeared. They kind of, I don't want to use the word pixelated, but they faded into pieces, into small things. And I was sad. And I remember going, don't go. I want to see you. They would come back, and they did it again. They faded, and I was very sad until I realized where they went. And they went into everything. They went into me, and they went everywhere. My sister and my father did not die. They never left. They're still here. Right now and everywhere. It was incredibly powerful. There was a point that I saw my sister. She died when she was 19, tragically killed by a drunk driver. Now let me share with you some of my travails. You know what I was doing this morning? I'm sitting here. Where is it? You ready for this? I'm watching victim impact videos on MAD. Why? Because a month and a half ago, before this, driving home with that Porsche way too fast, driving with my knees because I was eating fucking Wendy's at about midnight after meeting some buddies. And guess what happened? I got pulled over. Me, lost sister to a drunk driver, me, who's raised close to $100,000 for MAD, got pulled over. Now, thankfully, Monday, the court was like, all right, dude, just based on everything. So I reckless driving, which is still an embarrassment. But the fact that I fucked that up, man, well, you know what? I'm sorry I said that. After doing this experience, first of all, I haven't had a drink in a month since before the journey. I just don't feel it. I remember before this thing, like, oh, sure, heroin addicts drink. I have zero. All my the 5 guys who went down there, we're all like, anybody? They're like, no, I don't feel. We went out to dinner the other night and people were drinking like hard alcohol, and it kind of gave me a gag reflex. So, but real quick, I just wanted to share that with you. So thank you, Palm Beach County judge, reckless driving. But this was a personal failure of mine. I was at a low and I knew better. But I was sitting here this morning, and watching these videos. I'm like, my God, man, I could be doing these videos, and because of my sister. But anyway, let's go So at one point, I saw Monica came into view again, and I tried so hard to focus on her face. I wanted to see but she was young, right? And she drifted away, and she went over to my daughter, Keely. And that really freaked me out. I'm like, oh my God, is Keely in danger? She going to be killed by a drunk driver? I remember freaking out. And again, the camera kind of did the look at me. I tried to look at my sister Monica, and she went right over behind Keely. Like, so not to get too personal with Susie and I's business, but after it was, we had problems having Matthew. She had an emergency C-section in Balboa Naval Hospital, which destroyed the woman. And so we had a really tough time having Jack. And then after having Jack, I'm like, all right, we got 2 healthy boys, happy family. We moved to Chicago, and Susie said, I think there's a girl in here. I'm like, yay, here we go. So we had to do in vitro. It was a monster evolution, and we had Keely. Keely is my healing for my sister Monica. I felt it. I saw it. Keely's her own soul. She's her own being, but my sister Monica is right there. It was incredibly powerful. There was a lot of personal things that I saw, experienced that are personal to me, to my family, that I'll leave out. All of them forgiven, gone in the blink of an eye. Things that happened to me as a child that I thought would be like a horror story in this thing. God's like, Matthew, I have you. I have this. Put this away. It doesn't serve you. I got it. I've had a pain in my back 10, 15 years. Under this left shoulder blade, gone that next morning when I first of all, you don't wake up. This is a living dream, folks. It's literally a living dream. You're wide awake for this. But God, well, and somebody asked if there was any, absolutely, John. No. I thanked. Here's what's, old me before. So I got pulled over before I went down to Mexico. I thank God that happened. I thank God that I didn't hurt me or anybody else. I thank God. I have zero interest in drinking anymore. I have never felt better in my life. I mean, I didn't have a quote drinking problem or anything like that. But would I drink and get behind the wheel thinking I was fine? Yeah. So it was an absolute. James, is this only for vets or anyone can try it? Anyone can try it. I'll get it when I get to the end to give you the resources. I'll let you know. But let me, because the rest of, only twice during this 12-hour process did I see anything, and it wasn't even scary. So once there was a red kind of face that appeared, and it, just kind of using my brain at the moment. I'm like, well, is that something even or that? Okay. So, kind of, but it went away, right? So this thing appeared, whatever it was, and it went away. So, thinking, did you see anything? No, man, there was nothing that was scary. It was, no, it just kind of, I got the feeling like there, not that there's not evil, but anything bad in your life, it's okay. Folks, I felt there's absolutely, so, and you ready for this? Again, not to get super personal with, Susie and I debriefed for 6 hours. It took me 3 days after I get home to kind of unpack. I'm still unpacking. But you ready for this? I saw Susie and I old together. Every time that I saw Susie, she was at the most beautiful that she was in that phase, like when we were in college or flight school or in the Navy or Texas or Chicago. It was so cool. And I remember seeing a picture of us from Father's Day 2008, the whole 5 of us. And when I saw that image, it was God. The whole thing was, it's God. That's the first thing that I wrote when I got downstairs Saturday morning. They call it a gray day, right? I wrote God. He's in everywhere and every thing. So there's so much more to all of that Ibogaine, the Iboga journey, but it's personal to me. So I just shared with you some of it. I will leave you with this, and then we'll go to Sunday, because Sunday is incredible. If you think this is incredible, Sunday is more incredible, or just as incredible. The medicine gives you. Oh, that was another thing. I said, how am I speaking to you right now? How's this? A book appeared. Afterwards, I figured out it was most likely the Bible. The Bible opened. This book opened. And all the text on the page kind of went away, and there was a sentence. And I shared that the next morning with some of the facilitators. They're like, it's in the Bible, folks. They have found in chalices, in ceremonial and religious stuff, iboga residue. They call this the tree of knowledge, folks. They believe this is the Adam and Eve tree, folks. You don't need to talk. You don't need anything to talk to me. I'm God. I'm hanging out with you, Adam and Eve. And then they screwed up. There's just so many. Do your research, folks. Google Iboga, Ibogaine, PTSD. Go start doing all of your research. Whoever asked if it's just for vets, the answer is no. This is for anybody who suffered. But guys, this is not to be taken lightly. This is not. I was done for 12 hours. I told you one of the biggest decisions I made of my life was rolling onto my side, right? So, oh shit, what time's that meeting? I got to. Hang on 1 second. Hang on, guys. 1 second. Hey. Sorry about that, guys. I just had a calendar reminder pop up. I'm supposed to meet the leader of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm like, that ain't going to happen. I'm just getting to Sunday. All right, so let's go. So incredibly spiritual experience. God shows you your life. I saw answers. I know exactly what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I know what happens when I die. I saw Susie and I were holding hands, and we walked right into everything. It was peaceful. It was bliss. I've never been so happy. Death is not the end. It's a transition. I saw it. The night we got back to the States, we went out to dinner. I got a text that a guy I knew, a buddy of mine, died in a fighter crash up at Nellis Air Force Base that day. It was the first time in my life, in my career, that I did not feel sad. I didn't feel sad. I know exactly where he is and what happened and how he feels, what it feels like. It was, and the other guys were like, "Oh my God, I feel the same way." Instead of a sad reaction, but there's no way you call the family and be like, "Hey, I know where he is and everything's great." Now you sound like a kook, but it was very instructive that I felt uh, I felt happy or peace. Of course, the family would be sad and everything like that, but I absolutely, and I'm not, don't take this the wrong way, I don't fear death anymore. Now let's get to Sunday. Saturday was a great day. Wrote in the journal, slept. We all slept, met for a little bit, food, slept. It was after 12 hours. I mean, you were up for 12 hours. You just needed that day. Sunday, um, time for 5-MeO. And this is funny and powerful and incredible. They call it the God molecule, right? So if Friday you spend 12 hours with God showing you answers or you asking questions and on your journey, 5-MeO, you die in a good way. So you see, you kind of sit on the bed here, and it's a vape pen, right? And they do an initial, it's called a handshake hit. You kind of to get your body a little acclimated, and then you do a longer hit. They put the eye shades on you. There's eye shades on the pillow right there. You can see them, and then you lay back in the bed. Well, let's talk through some of the funny stuff first. I went second. We were all down on the 4th floor, all the way at the bottom of the house. They wanted us as far away from whoever was going through the experience as possible. Now I know why, because of me. So one of the guys went first, and then it was my turn. Okay. Uh, go up into the room. There's the facilitator, the psychologist was kind of sitting next to me right there on the pillows. I'm like, why are there pillows all over here? The doctor was to the right of me, and at the head of this bed right here was Marcus Capone from Vets. He was down there with us to hold space. So sat down and did the initial hit, did the longer hit. They count to 10. As you do, you inhale, and then as you exhale, they kind of just slide the eye shades down on you, and then they kind of lower you gently onto the bed. As they lowered me gently onto the bed, I just kept going. There was no bed. And you fall and you go into everything. You literally become a part of everything. Okay. I can't, again, words fail. Can't describe it 1,000%. I became everything. That was awesome. But I also remember it was a good brief because they said, hey, if you're ever like kind of analyzing it or whatever, it's called transcend. You're not, you didn't transcend. So I gave the hand signal for, you could do up to 4 hits, I think. So I gave the hand signal to do a third one. And after I did that and I went to lay back, I died. The ego, you die. I exploded into, it literally felt like a horse kicked me in the back into hyperspace. It's like you're sitting in the Millennium Falcon when it jumps to hyper. You explode and you die. 5-MeO is what is released when you die. I literally exploded into light, love, bliss, pure, unadulterated energy. I became God. And when I heard kind of somebody refer to that beforehand, I'm like, that's a little presumptive. Nope. I know exactly what happened. I felt it, and you become one with God. Can't describe the feeling. It was absolutely bliss is all I can say. When I woke up, when I came out of this, I wrote it down. The first words Marcus told me that I said were, this is what freedom feels like. So I remember all of that. And then here's where things get really interesting. So this is supposed to be mom. This is the icing on the cake. God kind of did what he needed to do Friday night, and then on Sunday, come be me and see how cool this is. Well, apparently, and so I'm on this bed. I'm kind of in a V shape, right? They told me I transcended, and they knew I transcended because, you ready for this? My arms and my legs were moving in perfect symmetry. And when they told me this, I'm like, what? I wasn't moving. They're like, yeah, you were. And no, they didn't record it. There, you can watch some of this stuff on, YouTube. I wish they had recorded this because they're like, your arms and your legs were moving in perfect symmetry. I'm like, I was not doing that. They're like, yeah, you did. So when you are God and you're at absolute, your ego is dead. Everything died. There is no space between you and God. All those layers from when you were born and your mom didn't pick you up right away when you cried for milk and you thought you weren't good enough. All of those layers that I've built up over 52 years instantaneously disappeared. That's what sin is. Sin is putting layers between you and God. I now understand when people are like Adolf Hitler, still God. God was in Adolf Hitler, guys. It was all the layers that put that much space to allow that to happen. Criminals, murderers, that's the sin, folks, is they have all that space. This treatment destroys that space and you transcend. Well, just like Apollo 13, my reentry wasn't smooth. The way it was told, I'm going to tell you what happened to me, and I'll tell you what I remember from it. So apparently, coming back from dying or being God, I went from transcending and my body moving in symmetry. Since the lady told me, she's like, you squinched, you got into this tight fetal position, sitting on the bed, squeezing every muscle in your body. She's like, it was like you were coming out of the birth canal. She's like, and I remember this because I remember I did not want to leave. But when I came back into this vessel, there wasn't room, man. There was still some shame or anger or resentment or depression, whatever the fuck was still in there, needed to leave. And I remember the beginning of this, and now I don't remember. This is what they told me, but I remember yelling, screaming at the top of my lungs. As the scream came out, I don't remember anymore. It was like exasperation. But apparently, after that initial one, I took a deep breath, and whatever I screamed louder and longer, and then I flipped in the bed. A front flip. I don't think I've ever done a front flip in my life. I flipped. And then I remember hearing a deep breath. And I'm like, oh, that isn't me. I didn't take a deep breath. I'm like, well, maybe I should. I took a deep breath, and I took another one, and I was wide awake sitting there in the bed facing the other direction. And I'm like, all three of them were sitting there looking at me, tears in their eyes with concern. And I'm like, hey, I had never felt happier, more at peace. I cried. I cried for a good 10 minutes, happy cry. But I found out later why they looked so concerned and they were like crying. After about 10 minutes of crying, and they had a bowl of fruit there, and I was just kind of chomping on it as I'm crying, and I'm like, oh my God, man. They said that I said, this is what freedom feels like. And then after I kind of collected myself, my throat was killing me. And I looked at them. I'm like, did I scream? Did I yell? And Marcus goes, yeah, maybe just a little bit. and it was funny because they don't want you to kind of, they don't want to bring you kind of down or anything like that. I'm like, oh, okay. And they were going to debrief me later. And then Marcus goes, look at where you are. And I'm facing this way where those pillows are. I'm like, wait, I was facing the windows. He's like, yeah, you flipped. I'm like, what? Yeah, you kind of flipped. But here's the funny part. So JT and one of the other guys who was there made their way up from that bottom floor to the floor right underneath this room, kind of on their own. So guess what happened? Yeah, if you listen to JT's podcast, it was funny as shit. That's me he's talking about. So here's what happens. I took about a half an hour to collect myself a little bit. They're like, take your time. We're here all day, man. You can, I mean, I cried several times. I've never been I can't describe the feeling after laying there in that bed. I'm like, everything was gone. One of the guys that were down there remarked later, he's like, dude, whatever demon was in there, you kicked the fucking shit out of that demon, man. He's gone. But here's the funny part. So JT and the other guy were sitting on a couch downstairs as I'm coming down the stairs. And one of the doctors was behind me. And I look at the couch where JT and this other guy are sitting there, and they turn around and they look like they seen death. They're like, what the fuck? They had, and the doctor, I guess, was behind me on the stairs going, no, shut up. Don't. He's happy right now. Don't. But now it makes sense because I'm looking at those two guys. I'm like, hey, I'm smiling. I got a bowl of fruit. I'm like happy and looking at those two guys. And they're like, the fuck was that? So they take me out on like one of the balconies and give me a little blanket. It's Sunday morning. I went to church. That's my church. That is my church. I went to church and I became God and God became me. So they put me out on the porch with like a little bowl of fruit. And I guess when the doctor went back in to go back upstairs and walked past the two on the couch, they were like, what the hell was that, man? What's going on? And she said, oh, it was a happy scream. So later at dinner that night, I was getting the debrief from those guys who heard what was going on. They're like, yeah, so fucking Whiz is upstairs. And it sounded like they were cutting him in half with a saw. And then you hear all this ruckus and banging and screaming. And then he comes down the stairs with this big shit-eating grin on his face. I was hysterical. I'm like, oh my God. The look on those guys' faces when I came down the stairs, but it made perfect sense. So I look at JT, I'm like, I screamed? And he goes, yeah. And it wasn't a happy scream, looking at the doctor like, it wasn't a happy, doc. It was, but it wasn't. So, my God, man, it was absolute insanity. Yeah, Sledge, I literally said that. That was freedom. I feel incredible. No shame, no regret, no sadness, no anger. There's stuff this legal shit, suing this guy out in California for lying about me, defaming. I actually have prayed for this guy and his wife every day. I see it now. There's God in them, and they are just the layers that people put on. Things that used to bother me. Susie was like, did you guys sleep next to pods and they replaced you with a better, well, she didn't say better, but Gene, you could say it like that. You fought and broke the shackles, man. So the 5-MeO, but individually they're life-changing. But even just one of them is life-changing. But neither of these is recreational. So first of all, 5-MeO's in your body. It's funny. People are like, oh, you went to a foreign country and did it. First of all, it ain't illegal. It's illegal in stupid countries, like 3 of them. America. Folks, this stuff was legal until like 85. They were doing studies on it until Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs, and everything got hammered. MDMA marriage counselors would give MDMA. Take 2 of these, call me Monday morning. You'll love each other again. So this stuff is gradually changing. So we talked about this in our live trade brief today about, the threats to mind medicine, right? This, all the legal and social. Look at this. The biggest obstacle facing mind medicine are the legal, regulatory, and social barriers. Ladies and gentlemen, the social barriers. Who would you rather listen to telling you that it saved their life? A Navy SEAL, a JTAC, an NFL star, and a fighter pilot? Or Joe Biden or somebody? So the stigma is going away. Legal in Oregon, decriminalized in California, Texas, Rick Perry. The Texas Senate voted like 190 to 2. I don't know who the 2 are. So I cannot, John, I did not see the sentence in the Bible. I couldn't read it. But when I talked to the guys afterwards, they're like, there's a quote in the Bible. Just Google it, John. Google Iboga Bible references, and you will see this. So for the sake of time, guys, let me turn you on to some things. I gave you this Marcus and Amber interview. Listen to theirs. Watch JT's podcast. Does everybody have the link to JT's podcast? So JT and I are the first 2 from our group to come out of the closet, so to speak. Okay. So if and when the other 2 guys do, we're all going to do it. I'm going to fly up, do a podcast and stuff like that. Now, this place is approved and vetted by vets. This is down in Mexico, Nouvelle V, New Life or whatever. So yesterday, 2 days ago, I called down there because in preparation for this brief. So this guy's name is Trevor Millar, who runs the center down there. Okay. I'm not going to read you all this shit. The dude is a 500-pound head in this space. This place, and he's part of the Canadian Psychedelic Association. He was featured in the movie Dosed. They have a paramedic on site. They have another provider down there, blah, 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 blah. So I called this guy. This place, let me give you the link here. I did a 3-day journey, and he's like, oh, dude, that ain't, you need longer than that. They do 5. I technically did 5 because I flew out to San Diego a day early and took a day to relax. And then when we got back, I took a day and flew back the following day. So technically I did 5, but it was my own choosing. The one I did was 3. 3 days equaled 20 years of therapy. I'd say 40 years of therapy. It cured everything in my life. Not being facetious, there's nothing that bothers me anymore. I've never. That's not true, but even somebody cut me off in traffic. Old me, finger, horn, run them off the road. I actually say thank you now. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get rid of the Porsche. I have zero need to drive 150 miles an hour down I-95. I probably didn't before either, but I just don't care anymore. I feel fantastic. Every day that goes by with my meditations and everything like that, I get closer and closer to God. So this place, ladies and gentlemen, does a 5-day Ibogaine and 5-MeO. I'm warning you, Ibogaine is granddad, and granddad can kick the shit out of you physically. I will tell you that Susie is going down to the place that I went to, and some of the wives are, because it's very hard. It has been very hard at home. Not very hard at home. I'll say it's been a challenge at some points. Why? I came back, ladies and gentlemen, literally as a clean piece of paper. I have a brand new book by the grace of God. There ain't no before. Zero. Nothing. No shame, no regret. All the stuff I was hanging on to, it's gone. Susie, and she's given me, she's just, whatever can help people, Matthew, go ahead and talk about. Not so much. Right? So if your significant other, your partner, your girlfriend can go, I strongly recommend it. But the women are not going to do Ibogaine. It's usually reserved for people with significant trauma, PTSD, CTE. So the doctors kind of decide what you need. So they're going to do, I think, MDMA and psilocybin one day, and then Sunday they're doing the 5-MeO. Christina, for security, I'm not going to tell you the place I went. This place is exactly similar. This place is vetted by vets. Let me share with you from Marcus. Marcus, where is it? So here you go. This is from Marcus Capone. This is where veterans are going to start heading for Ibogaine and 5-MeO treatments similar to what you experienced with his foundation. Right there. He also gave me resources to other places they have vetted for ayahuasca, Ibogaine 5-MeO. I think that one's Costa Rica. Psilocybin, ayahuasca. You know what? I'm going to highlight all these. But the one at the top is the one I called and talked to. I'm not responsible for any of this, guys. If you want to do this on your own or do your own research, knock yourself out. But look in the chat box right now, and I just put all the resources that I have at my disposal. I'm putting the ladder down to help you. Okay? Does that make sense? Sid, it's $3,500. $3,500 for the 5-day. I got that it's $4,500. The guy said, since you work with Marcus and Amber, and I'm going to maybe send you're going to decide to do it on your own. It's $3,500. So all in, call it $4,500, folks. $1,000, I don't know, travel. I stayed in a hotel in San Diego the night before I went down, and then I stayed an extra day. It was, I don't know. But listen to, if you're self-financed, if you're a veteran suffering from PTSD, Vets is a foundation. We're a foundation that are going to start. We're still figuring out all our legal shit, but Vets is a definite resource. But to be honest with you, knowing most of you probably got the $3,500. I would try and let's not do that, guys, because the money I've given the vets is used for a staff sergeant who doesn't have two pennies to rub together, right? Who can't afford $3,500 and a flight to San Diego. That's why I've given a lot of money to vets to do this. Okay, so this center is. I talked to the dude. He sent me an email. Seems like a great guy. Trevor, tell him. Trevor Millar. I watched this the other night. I did not know the Lamar Odom story, man. Let me give you that link too. This is, my God, man. He did this. You remember this guy with the Kim Kardashian? He was going to put a bullet in his head too. How do I share this? Copy link. So you guys have a lot of homework if you're interested in this. I'm sorry this went really, really late. There is so much more I have to tell you. Maybe as I keep going through my journey, we can keep unpacking more and more of the stuff. But again, I probably rambled way too much. Some of you might think I'm fucking nuts. I'm not, man. I can't. It's in Mexico, guys. Here, let me. It's in. So no, right here. It's in Rosarito Beach. There it is, right there. Okay. So if you like the experience, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to say like the experience. First of all, I love, and here's what's funny is, so JT and the other guys are like, oh, we're coming again to do this. I boga. I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing that, dude. I got what I needed. Marcus Capone, he did 5-MeO after we all did, like later in the afternoon. I actually got to hold space from Marcus. Very sacred. I was holding space as he did his 5-MeO journey. It was very powerful, incredibly powerful. No, I think he said we could talk. Well, whatever. I won't, but it was. So this place does exactly what I did, but gives you 2 extra days on site. I did the 2 extra days off site, so it's 6 of 1. No problem, Whiz. We knew you were nuts before. Things have not changed. Thanks, Stephen. John, you did not speak long enough from my perspective. John, I have a ton more, but we've been going for like, what, 2 hours, which is the longest webinar I've ever done. But John, there's so much more to come. So much more. I just wanted to give you a high level or at least a handshake brief to get the ball rolling, because I've gotten 20 emails like, dude, I really need help right now, and I'm not going to play I Got a Secret any longer. So this was the initial. So John, to your point, I'm going on a national podcast. I have no filter. I have zero shame. I have nothing, guys. It is me and God and my family and you, and I couldn't be more blessed. Couldn't be happier. Couldn't be more blessed for all of you. So I feel great. I've never been at peace. This is a peace I've never felt before. I've healed my sister. I've healed my father. I've healed some things that happened when I was a child. Healed my marriage. Love my kids. Could not be happier. And I'm gonna do the Lord's work, man. So if this helped you out in any way, then I did my job. All right. So I'm gonna get going. I'm missing an appointment, but this was very important. So have a great rest of your day, guys. Happy hunting. Make sure you hedge, and God bless. And I really mean it.